Just one day after Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin reported to training camp, it seems as though his contract negotiations have gotten a whole lot crazier. I'm Matthew Heiserman, your host of the Rays Hail Report, and today we're breaking down the latest news regarding Terry McLaurin's looming extension. So earlier today on the Pat McAfee show, ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter stated that Terry McLaurin wants, quote, considerably more than what DK Metcalf is making. Metcalf is currently making $33 million per year. Now, for starters, Schefter said, I think. He did not say, I know. And when you're talking about the biggest NFL reporter in the world, people are going to make a big deal about anything that he says. So there's a chance that this isn't even true to begin with and that this information is not accurate, but people are going to immediately jump to conclusions. So just keep that in mind that Adam Schefter said, I think, and that he is not 100% confident about this being correct. But $33 million for Terry McLaurin is understandable. He's coming off the best season of his career. He had 13 touchdowns last season. This team saw a lot of success. And Garrett Wilson just received $32.5 million annually. So 33 mil is not a big jump from what Garrett Wilson is making. Obviously, Wilson is younger, but McLaurin was more productive last season. But when Schefter says he wants considerably more than that, I find that a bit outrageous. And I think that's going to be a big holdup in terms of the progression of this deal. After hearing that, I wouldn't be surprised if this deal takes multiple weeks. We saw McLaurin show up to training camp, and we thought that could potentially be a positive, that maybe this deal gets done by the end of this week. But right now, I feel as though it could still be a month until this deal gets worked out, just based on what Adam Schefter said today. Now, DK and Terry were in the same 2019 NFL draft class. DK is a lot younger, though, right? Terry McLaurin is going to be turning 30 in September. DK Metcalf is going to be turning 28 in December. So Metcalf is 2 years younger than Terry McLaurin. Now, that said, you could also make the case that McLaurin was more productive last season, just like he was more productive than Garrett Wilson, but you have to consider age. And to say that he wants considerably more, considerably means a lot more. Considerably means maybe we're looking at $34 or $35 million. For someone who is 2 years older than DK Metcalf, that just doesn't make sense in my mind. And this would probably make Terry the third highest paid wide receiver in the NFL if he does get considerably more than Metcalf. Because CeeDee Lamb is currently the fourth highest paid receiver in the NFL. He is currently the third highest paid receiver. He's making $34 million a year. Lamb is the third highest, making $34 million a year. Metcalf is the fourth highest, making $33 million a year. So you'd assume that if McLaurin gets considerably more than Metcalf, we're probably looking at more than just a $1 million gap, right? We're looking at maybe $2 million, which would put him at $35 million. And that would be the third highest in the NFL, obviously behind Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, your two top guys. And under no circumstances, Terry McLaurin a better receiver than CeeDee Lamb. Right, I'm a Commanders fan, and I'm talking about an NFC East rival. But Lamb is much younger, and he's a much better receiver. So if Terry is actually asking for more than him, it just doesn't make sense to me. Right, at some point, Terry just has to understand his own value. And as much as I love him as a player, he is not that valuable. And right now, based off multiple reports, including what Jeremy Fowler said on my podcast last week, Washington is looking to pay McLaurin closer to what a low-end elite receiver would be making. Like T. Higgins, for instance, who is currently making $28.75 million annually. And I think a lot of this deal comes down to how badly Terry McLaurin wants to be a Commander for life. Because there's two different outcomes. He only cares about the money. And if that is the outcome, then I don't think Washington's going to go to $33 million or definitely not $34 million. So if he only cares about the money, I don't know if he's going to be a Commander come the start of the season. But the other outcome is that he wants to stick with one team for his whole career. He wants to stick with the team that drafted him. He wants to stick with the team he just made the NFC Championship game with. He wants to stick with his second-year quarterback that is already arguably a top 5 QB in the league. And if that's true, and he wants to stick with Washington, maybe they could meet in the middle, somewhere closer to $30 million per year. And, if Terry would be okay with that, if Terry would maybe take a little less than what he wants and go down to $30 million, I think Washington should pull the trigger on that immediately. I think that is a very good deal compared to how the rest of the market has looked recently. Getting a 29-year-old, soon to be 30-year-old Terry McLaurin at $30 million per year is a very reasonable price. I don't know if Terry would accept that, though. I would imagine that right now he wants a lot more based on what we've heard. And I'm hoping that eventually Terry will cave in, right? I think again, right now, I don't think he wants to have less than what Metcalf is making, or at least he wants to be around that 33, maybe $32 million range at minimum. And he has shown that he wants to be here, right? So that makes me think there's a potential chance he does end up caving in, though, and take a little less money, just based off how much he has shown that he wants to be here. When he reported to training camp, he signed autographs that first day for over 25 minutes. And most guys who hold out, I know Terry was holding out for a short period of time. Most guys who hold out will request a trade. It doesn't mean they necessarily want to be on a different team. It means they're trying to add more pressure to the team they're on to maybe make a move. And Terry never requested a trade. And I think a lot of that is because he just wants to be in Washington. He loves it here. He loves the fan base, and he wants to stay here for the rest of his career if he can. It's just a matter of, can they agree on a deal to make that happen? And right now, they have not been able to. And then you look at training camp, which is going on right now. Washington's offense has really struggled at training camp. Jaden Daniels looks improved from last year. Deebo Samuel looks like he's back to his prime form, or at least near that prime form. But the offense hasn't looked nearly as good as a whole without Terry McLaurin, which is something you would obviously expect, losing your top wide receiver who had over 1,100 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns last season. But you just can't have this standoff go into the start of the season. That's when it really becomes a major problem. I think it's already becoming a problem right now. I think it's starting to become a problem, but that would be a major problem. I would be extremely concerned if this goes into the start of the season. Now, we still have over a month until we get to that point. Now, another perspective I want to look at is Terry McLaurin's agent, who has been at training camp with him the past few days. Terry McLaurin's agent is Buddy Baker. And you look at his client list, and McLaurin is by far the biggest name on his client list. And there might be a reality to this, there might not be, but I fear that Buddy Baker is trying to get more money from this deal than what is reasonable, because he knows that McLaurin is his biggest client, and he knows that this is the deal that's going to be able to get him the most money. So there is a chance in my mind that it's really McLaurin's agent that is making this deal a lot more difficult than it has to be, and he's sort of interfering and making this a challenge for Washington, asking for a lot of money. In that Schefter report earlier, I don't know how much of that is really Terry McLaurin versus Terry McLaurin's agent, who wants considerably more than DK Metcalf, if that makes sense. And then another receiver got a contract earlier today, Courtland Sutton, just a few hours ago. He received his new contract. He's making $23 million per year. Now, you could immediately say, don't compare Terry to Courtland Sutton. And I agree with that, right? They're much different receivers. Terry McLaurin's a lot more productive than Cortland Sutton. But if you want to look at it in terms of two players who are comparable in age, Sutton is another receiver who is 29 years old, about to turn 30. McLaurin's turning 30 in September. Sutton's turning 30 in October. So these two wide receivers are very similar in terms of age. So again, there's a big gap between them. But the fact that there's another 29-year-old, soon to be 30-year-old, who just got a $23 million per year contract, I don't think that helps these McLaurin negotiations at all. And if Terry and his agent don't budge, again, this deal will take a long time because Adam Peters is not a GM who will overpay one of his players for a win or to make the fan base happy. The old regime or the old ownership with Snyder and Rivera may have done that. But Peters is really willing to take his time, which is something that we have learned over the past few months, even if it means the fan base isn't happy. There was a point where the entire fan base on X was spamming, pay Terry. But Peters is not the guy to cave in. He's not the guy to budge and say, the fans are mad, so I'm going to pay Terry. He is going to take his time and try and get the best deal he can, which is something I really appreciate. And that's why I'm kind of looking at both sides. And I really do like what Adam Peters is doing because $34 million a year, $35 million a year is too much. So I can appreciate that he is being really stingy with this and not just paying Terry McLaurin to pay Terry McLaurin, especially when you have Jaden Daniels, who in a few years will be the highest paid player in the NFL. You need money to pay Jaden Daniels because we know with how the market has looked over the past few years, he is going to get a huge contract. So my final takeaway on this whole situation, this deal is not going to get done if Terry really wants considerably more than what DK is making, right? Terry needs to realize that even if the market has gone up recently, he's not a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, let alone top 3. And until he realizes that, this deal could take a long time because Peters and the rest of the front office won't budge. In terms of what I would like to see, I think that a $30 million annually deal is fair. I think that's fair on both sides. I think Washington would probably do that. I think maybe that's a little higher than where they want to be at, but I do think that they would eventually be okay with a $30 million per year deal. I think maybe Terry maybe that's a little lower than what Terry wants, but I think it would take, that's a good compromise in my mind, where maybe Washington has to pay a little more than they want. Maybe Terry has to accept a little less than he wants, but I think $30 million a year for a guy who is in his prime but about to turn 30 is more than fair on both sides. So we'll see where things go from here. It'll definitely be interesting to follow this whole situation and what happens going forward. But if you made it up to this point, I really appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. It's completely free, helps the channel grow significantly. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman on the Raise Hail Report. And as always, we will see you next